Okay, so just to get started, my name is Kate Zanon. I'm the vice chair of the Women in Planning Division of the American Planning Association. And so today I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the sorry, I just realized my screen. I need to do one shift. There we go. That should be in slideshow now. So I'm here to talk to you today about the Untold Stories Project, which is a new project that's being started by the division. Okay, so a little bit about just first off, as I shared, it's a project by the Women in Planning Division, and we did get support of the division's council for this project. So we're grateful for their assistance in us being able to launch this. All right, so a little bit about the project and what the purpose of the project is. So the Untold Stories Project is intended to be a digital searchable archive talking about women who've been engaged in the planning profession or who have contributed to the planning profession in some way. The intention is to share the stories of people who have taught, who have led, who have mentored, who've inspired, who've led projects, who've supported. So it's very broad reaching of anyone who's been involved in planning. And we're looking to capture both people who've made bold changes as well as people who've made incremental impacts over time. So important to point that out. So really, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to feel you've done something really significant to be able to that you feel is really significant to be able to participate, because all of our contributions have had a significance, and it's just about making sure we tell our stories. So why are we calling it the Untold Stories Project, and why is it about stories? So really the inspiration for this project came back to about 2 years ago when we were developing content for Women's History Month. And during that time, we were trying to pull up stories of women who'd been in the planning profession and find different people who've been published in books or in articles. And we realized how few stories were out there being told. And we also realized that a lot of what we're finding in professional publications or in textbooks are more matter-of-fact information that really talks about a specific action and not actually the story and the circumstances that led to it. And so we really wanted to be able to not only capture that information for future people to read and learn about, but also to be able to do it in that storytelling way, in the sense, and being able to share the information, not just in a really matter-of-fact way. So why do we tell stories? We tell stories to help us make sense of the world. We tell stories so we can share information in a way that creates an emotional connection. We tell stories to help us understand information and each other. We tell stories to make information more memorable. We tell stories to teach, to inform, to inspire, to entertain. We tell the stories to invoke emotions. We tell stories to connect people across common interests, across generations, or across experiences. And we tell stories to make a mark on the world and to leave a little bit of ourselves behind. So when you really look at the purpose of why we tell stories, it really made a lot of sense that this project was not only capturing what women have done in the profession, but actually telling those stories and making those connections. So who can participate in this project? And again, it's you. It's really anyone who has a story to tell. So it's all women who've worked in the planning profession, of course, because this project is being sponsored by the Women in Planning Division, and this is the original intent of the project. We are telling the stories of women. As this project grows over time, though, of course, there may be opportunities to grow that. We want the stories of people who are working today, people who have retired, or even people who've passed on. People who would participate would be someone who's willing to share a little bit about themselves, what they've accomplished, how they've overcome challenges, or how they may have overcome an adversity. And we encourage you to share both your story and or to share a story on behalf of another person. And why that's significant is because, of course, each of your stories individually is important, but one of the inspirations we had for this project was I was thinking about a university professor of mine who had passed on several years ago now. And a story that she had shared with us in a class about how she had early in her career, got herself invited to different international conferences. And the first time it was actually an accident. She didn't realize that what she did was getting her invited. But once she realized, once this did happen, she continued to leverage it to get her voice at the table. And it occurred to me with her passing on that that story now just lives in the minds of the students she shared it with. And yet it's an inspiring story that other people could learn from. And somehow we need to get that information documented. So how can you participate? So there is a questionnaire that we have set up that has a whole variety of questions, both about yourself and of where you've worked, where you've gone to school. It asks you to identify the different APA divisions that you see your work affiliated with. So this does not mean you need to be a member of those divisions, but if you've done work in transportation planning, you would check that box. It also uses APA's population-based division, so you can check any of those boxes that apply to you, and of course any of the APA state divisions or international, so you can also document where in the US or in the world you've worked. So I've put on here both the website as well as the link to the questionnaire. So we will post this webinar after, so you can use this to, of course, link yourself right to this information. And I think Bethany's are also putting it in the chat. We'll also ask you to share a few photos, one of yourself, as well as photos around some work that you were involved in that you wanted to highlight. And then, as I shared, we'll link the information you share to APA divisions. So once you've complete the questionnaire, then what happens? Well, we have assembled a project team that will actually be working to write up these stories. So once we receive your information, the project team will work to turn this into some really dynamic prose. And ultimately, then your story will be added to the Untold Stories website, which is also work that's underway, is actually creating a website where all of this information can live and be in a searchable database. So your story will be coded, as I shared, to APA's various different divisions. And so this will allow people who want to learn about specifically women who planned in a certain state or perhaps in a certain field or were identified as a certain population, they can actually find you through all these different means. And then the project team will be following up with you just to affirm all of the permissions we need to have to publish your story, to clarify any information or request any additional information that we may need as we're writing up your story. And then you will see a draft of the story before we publish it. So where we're at right now is really trying to create the momentum around the project and get people to start submitting their stories. So we're asking others to first off submit your story if you feel comfortable sharing your story, share the project with your networks, directly connect with someone whose story you think should be told. And of course, I gave the example of one of my past professors. So in that case, you would connect with a family member if you could to see if they would be comfortable sharing that person's story. And then, as I said, don't be shy, share your own stories. So we do have some key dates we're working towards. We are hoping to collect this kind of first round of stories by around mid-October, because we do want to launch the Untold Stories website by mid-November. So that's phase 1 of our project. And then we'll be moving into phase 2 of the project, which is really just the ongoing participation and continuing to collect stories and continuing to have people to want to submit as they learn about the project or get more people. And so the database continues to grow and grow and grow. And our intention would be to continue to promote this annually, doing Women's History Month, as well as through our other channels in the Women in Planning division. So that's all I had formally to present today. So now we can just open it up to some Q&A. And then, of course, I have my email information here if anyone wanted to reach out directly to me to ask anything else specific that doesn't get covered today. So I'm just going to take a moment to go back a couple slides, and then actually I think I'll have to stop sharing and then I can start answering any questions you may have. All right, so I don't see any raised hands, but if someone does have a question, feel free just to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, I do have a question.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, are you accepting any video? I have an interview done by my mentor before she passed away that's in the archives. It was done by a professor at Rice University. It's in the University of Houston archives. That I think is awesome and would love to get in your hands. But it's a recorded video. Would you want that video, or would you want to have like a transcript made or something?
Oh yeah, I hadn't actually contemplated someone submitting it through a video, but yes, we would welcome you to submit that. Our project team will take a look at it and see if we can use the video to actually uh, write up the information, and if it's we're having any challenges, of course, we would just connect back in with you and just see how we could make this work. Because absolutely, if people have, especially for someone who's passed on, if you have recorded information, that's a great way that we're able to now turn that into a story that can go onto this archive. So yeah, so thank you for asking that. Does anybody else have any questions? Again, I don't see any hands, but if you do have a question, just go ahead and unmute yourself and feel free just to ask the question. Bethany, is there anything in the chat that I'm not seeing that to address?
Nothing in the chat, but Jamie,
Oh, I
your
see it now.
hand is raised.
Yeah, I have a question. Are anonymous submissions allowed?
So I think we could keep the person's information anonymous when we go to publish it, but we would need to know who the person is so that we can get all of the authorizations that we are allowed to publish, and so that we can actually get them to sign off on the draft. But if they did not want their name included, I don't think we would have to do that. We could do it in another way. Does anyone else have a question?
Stephanie has a question in the chat. Stephanie, you're welcome to speak to it, but the question is this opportunity also open to emerging planners who are working on capstone projects with community partners?
So Stephanie, I'm not sure if you're asking about if the emerging planner can submit their story, or if you're meaning if they can submit the story around the community partners. We really haven't set specific criteria that you have to have a certain number of years of experience or you have to have done certain accomplishments. The intention actually is not just to capture, the stories that would be easy to find, but to actually capture a broad spectrum of people's stories. So if someone feels they can answer the questions and have information that they want to get shared, then we're happy to receive that submission. Any other questions?
I have a question. What about capturing stories for support staff in planning offices as opposed to like people who bear the title of planner?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely acceptable. I think this is why I was trying to say it doesn't have to be just someone who feels they did something bold. Some of the other kind of smaller, more incremental, perhaps support work is equally important to capture because it's what's helped lead to various successes. So yep, that's
Yeah.
absolutely fine.
I was thinking about our administrative professional who's been in our office for 35 years, longer than any of us have, and has seen more more of how planning has transformed our region than any of the professional planners in our office.
Yeah, no, I think that would be appropriate to submit that story for sure. Any other questions? So I know a few people have been joining as we've been in the Q&A. So just for your understanding, I actually did go through a bit of a small presentation, just explaining the project and giving some context of who and how to participate. So we will share that at like we'll put that through our planning, our Women in Planning website. I actually do have some more time, so if after we finish the Q&A, I can quickly go through some of it again for those who didn't hear it. I'll just do an abbreviated version if some of you did want to stay on who didn't hear me go through it the first time. But if there are no more questions, then that was all we had today. We just really wanted an opportunity to share more about the project, to really encourage you to submit your own stories and start gathering people's stories and to get the momentum going. And of course, do not hesitate to reach out if you come up with other questions as you're trying to gather stories.
I was wondering if you also accept volunteer work.
Yes, yep, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anyone else have questions? Okay, well, if that's it for questions, again, thank you for participating today. And if you did join late and did not see the presentation at the beginning, but you would like me to give you a short overview, please feel free to stay on and I'll do a quick overview starting in about 2 minutes for anyone who didn't see it the first time. Thank you.